My name is Danielle Monteiro. No, my name is Danielle Monteiro, but my friends call me Danny. I am Cloud Solution Architect and in Microsoft, and I am here to talk about three extremely important things: data, governance, and Postgres. Postgres have when I talk about Postgres, I remember I recently to talk a person who wanted to build a data architecture. It's a head scenario for the data architect. But after 5 minutes of talking, I found out that this person just needed to know more about Postgres and use it resources more. This is how I would like to talk about saving money. Before looking for a solution, you need to know well. You need to know the solution that you have. And believe me, Postgres is extremely complete. Among so many amazing features, I understand that you know Postgres and know how amazing it is. What if join Postgres and Azure? This is my invitation for the future. And here have amazing possibilities. When I talk about Postgres and talk Azure, I have possibilities and I have power. I have power to choose. What do you need? This is my question for you, because when you join Postgres and Azure, you have a lot of possibilities to adapt. Microsoft Azure is the Microsoft Cloud that lets you turn your ideas in services. And Azure have more than 100 services to build, deploy, and and manage applications. You use cloud on premises and at edges, using tools and frameworks have a lot of possibilities. In World of Data, we are committed to empowering organizations to build on their terms with flexibility and choice, and includes the possibility to operate anywhere. And I think this is a amazing scenario, because I don't want to say, oh, your database is not completed or not. No, but you have other possibilities. Here in Brazil, we have a very famous song, and I don't want to sing because I am a very terrible singer, but this sing says time does not stop. And here we have also a saying that say time is money. And so saving time is saving money. When we can create solution quickly, the faster the collect, process, store, and use data, you save money. Do you understand the logic? Save time, save money. The correct choice of PostgreSQL server is important to save money. Azure Postgres, Azure database for Postgres flexible server is a fully managed database. is a very amazing service designed to provide more granular control and the flexibility over database management functions and configuration settings. In general, the service offers more flexibility and server configurations, customizations based on user requirements. Flexible server architecture allows a user to place the database engine with the client tier for lower latency and choose high availability in a single availability zone in multiple availability zones. It's flexible. Flexible services also provide the best cost optimization and controls with the ability to stop and start your server. If you use a service, need the server now, okay, start your server. If your service don't need the service, you stop your services, and that's okay. Uh, and the other thing is scale out the compute tier is very cool for workloads that don't need full computed capacity, and you have choices. And when you have a choice, you have uh, money. I say to save money, and because this, I always talk about time, about your choose. But more than this, I have a very important thing to talk when I talk in database. Maybe you were already asking about data modeling and how it can help you save money. And I have an answer. When we correctly model database, not only we have higher quality data and higher performance applications, but we also save money. One kind of example, I love this example. When I was a consultant, I attended a client who had a very large database. The data was fully normalized, and that's why the queries are absurdly slow. A lot of joins they solve the problem of the slowness. They created a specific index for each the queries. Okay, the short time later, I went to visit the client who had a slow writing and slow reading. Okay, the end of history was happy. Together we designed the model, applying this tip, a lot of tips I brought to you, and the database was 15 times smaller, and the amount paid per month decreased by 10 times. I think this is my favorite and fair tale, my private fair tale. At this stage of our conversations, I want to be clear that Postgres services on Azure meet a number of different needs and make the right choice services had an impact on the spending. What do you want to use of money? In addition, we need to correct configure high availability, security, access types, data region, with the settings made consistently and properly, the company save money. First, because you will choose a suitable service, and not bigger than expected. Second, because you will spend once you not expend money on some types of data incidents, and we have laws to protect the data. When we start a project, we have a freedom to make the right choice and model the database correctly. When I was in the master, I need to study a researcher named Mood, and Mood had wrote article, um, and he says fixing the database is 33 times more expensive than modeling the database correctly. That is why it's so important to make the right choices to save money. The first thing what I need to talk when I in a data modeler possibilities is the data types. In Postgres, I have a schema, and that contains database objects, tables, views, index, data types, functions, and operators. This is the first data modeling point that I would like to address, because it is an important choice and often goes unnoticed. We started with the point that data types take up spacing within your databases. Um, so the correct choice already influences the expenses. Another point is the data quality, which can be maintained when the correct data type is chosen. I love to work with NoSQL databases, but it always advocates that right research should be used at the right time. So when I was consulting, I have a client, a customer who really wanted to use document-oriented NoSQL database to store data in JSON format. His solution was amazing. But I propose a more economical and very scalable solution, since he was already using Postgres. We create a table with a column of type JSONB and index it with a gene index. The solution is very cool. The creation of one table with one column of the right type, and the customer don't need to pay, maintain, and administer other database, because this is so important to choose the database. We must be very attentive to the data types used in your columns, because they consume space and greatly influencing in restrictions on values. In addition, impact in the execution plan of your queries. Therefore, we need to understand how the column will be used to choose the best data type. Another important point, when we choose the correct data type, we take away from application the responsibility to performing certain validations, and some resources can only use it by attributes of certain data types. Because of this, I need to choose Okay, but now you may be asking yourself, what are the best practices to choosing the data type? First thing is to understand the business for which you are modeling the data. This way is the easier and the best way to understand your business, your scenarios. The data will be stored in column. Is asking for your team. With the information, we choose the appropriate data type and the right size. For example, you will store a due date. Then you will choose a data type date because the correct data type for this information. Choosing a text type to store a date, it's not correct in the most of scenarios. I don't like this type of solution because and it's dangerous because when you need to put data in the test data type, it does not generate errors in your application. Imagine you need to sort the orders received. If you store a string in a data, you may have a problems with sorting. And more, still thinking about this case. A user can include an invalid data for the order. Don't have validation in the application, don't have a validation in database, and the client and this generates a problem. In audit, for example, it is a problem, very terrible problem. Making users not trust the data, for example. In other words, it's a huge problem not choosing correct data type. And because this is very important to do the correct alternative. I love this subject. Everything is connected, and I believe it. I love this subject, but I am a little afraid of it because the choice of index impact the space used by database and also performance of reads and writes in database. Indices are wonderful for data readings, but on the other hand, they are dangerous for writings. That is why I wanted to bring this topic into our conversation. When you choose to use an index, you need to analyze what type is most suitable and what impact of the choice is. Um, when well used, index are real boost of the queries. And in this way, it is possible to make data available faster and thus we deliver a better solution. And be careful. Postgres provides several index types. B3 can handle equality and ranges queries and can be sorted in the same order. Gist index is not a single kind of index, but rather an infrastructure which many different index strategies can be implemented. SPGIST similar, like a GIST index offers infrastructure that supports various kind of search. Gene index are inverted index which can handle values that contain more than k arrays, JSONB, for example, and choose the correct index because index have impact. And I think it's not simple to choose the index, but it's necessary to know that I have a lot of index types, and each index type, when I use in an appropriate situation. Oh, this is a question to you. What is the main operation for the project that you are building? This question is important for several reasons. First, if the main operation of your database is reading, then we will probably have index, and we will accept some redundancies so that the queries are faster. In this way, we will choose a configuration with more storage capacity. If the main operation is writing, then we will probably have more normalized data and avoid using index. Avoid, okay? Avoid, it's not, oh, you are prohibited. Not. You thinking about in situation to choose the index. So we will have less spacing being used. Do you understand why this decision impact in your project and your money? I want to talk more about it. This is the main operation is very important. Is the one that delivers the greatest value to the business. What is the operation important? And understand that it is not always the fast or is the one that occurs in and other important thing. The most important operation, it's not that occurs the most often. It is the one who cannot fail. The main operation have a big impact on the choice of the data modeling, because don't just want to create entity relationship diagrams and put my data in the normal form. It's more. Without thinking about the vision, the main operation is the one for which we must ensure that choosing resources are sufficient, because does not fail. You will identify this operation by talking to the user, and usually my question is what can never be out of there. I usually get some features in response, and can I ask about the feature that makes the president or director receive a call or make a call? At this moment, I discover the main operation, and be careful with it. It's very it's a joke. What the operation that the president or director was informed that failed. This is important for the business. But I have other important information. For using any system, the major function, the most important function, must be needed to be present is a basic operations like reading and writing, and the creation or alteration of the schemas that store data in a particular system. This here I want to need about the information, the operation that's what is occurs. And I have one point. Postgres use MVCC, multi-version concurrence control, to allow for greater database concurrence. Each update, insert, delete, leads a temporary marking of lines for delete. For delete. These temp tags identify inactive tuples, and that will be cleaned up later. And to clean up, Postgres runs a vacuum job. A vacuum job can be triggered manually or automatically when the database undergoes operations with the frequency of the update and delete. When the database is idle, the number is lower. We will need to run jobs, the vacuum jobs, more frequently when the database load is heavy. I have a point. The vacuum jobs need to adapt to the workload. Test, and you are to need a configuration. You need to test the vacuum parameter and observe advantages and disadvantages for this configuration. In my opinion, auto vacuum is one of the amazing Postgres configuration. It's impacted the performance of your database and make us think about the most performant operation. When think about performance, we need to think the more adequate configuration. What we are going to archive with the correct analysis is very important saving. At this stage of modeling, we need to be aware of the operations that occur with greater frequency to know what this frequency is. This way, we will make wiser decisions regarding configurations, modeling, and service choice, because this how we save money. We need to delete a lot of data. Okay, better get them is better. Your data is normalized, and I need to think about vacuum configuration. It's the data load intensive. Okay, normalization can be used here. On the other hand, if the data can load in the batch, I think in the normalized data. Are the readings critical? I have index because but I need beware of index, but they are affected by writes. Are updates important? Okay, pay attention of the criteria for choosing the lines to be updated, and pay attention to the index, and remember vacuum configuration. And delete, insert, update, be attention with the auto vacuum configuration, because this is important to choose the correct correct configuration to servicing. Summarizing what we talk about here, to save money with the data modeling, we thought give up governance, data governance, and we need to make the right choice. And one thing that I really like um, is knowing that the choice are in my hands. In addition, uh, to your freedom of choice, you need to pay attention to some very important points. The data types, type of index, most important operation in most main operation. This information gives you the basis for the correct choice for the following information. To save money, considering use Azure for PostgreSQL flexible server, we need to choose layer. For each layer, we have different servers and price. We must choose the correct tier, and nothing above or below the necessary according to use the server. You need to think in server configuration. Each machine has its cost. A number of servers and number of hours the server will be used. How will the server be used? Amount of data, how big is your database? Instance reservation, I like this recurse because it's very important to save money. Where the customer is a Microsoft specific to Microsoft services, where the customer can reserve instance for 1 or 3 years and save money. And backup redundancy type. And here, is it possible for your line of business to have a geographical redundancy of backup? It's important because some business have a loss, and I need to know if my data is out for my country. In this case, it's always good to check the current laws to make a correct decision. And last, I need to think about the backup size. When we model a database, we understand that business need um, and in this in this way we can make the best choice to save money, have governance and performance. It's a very important power moment. Um, and to finish, I am very happy to stay here with you. It's a pleasure to talk in a Postgres event. And my in all social media, it's possible to to find me, Danielle Monteiro, DBA. And I am very grateful to a Postgres team in Microsoft. This is an amazing event, and I am very, very grateful to stay here and watch the other sessions in the event. Have a lot of knowledge and a lot of possibilities. And I would like to talk with you in another opportunity. Bye bye.